When the combination of cans and body horror becomes a phenomenon, the first person that comes to mind is Julia Ducournau, the French director known for her shocking debut Raw and her Palme d'Or-winning Titani in 2021. This year, however, another French new generation director has conquered Kim with body horror, Coralie Fargeat. Her unique signature can now be seen alongside that evocative combination. The film The Substance kicks off with a bizarre shot. A strange substance is injected into an egg yolk, and soon enough, the yolk splits into two. Once upon a time, Elizabeth Sparkle, a rising Hollywood star, had just earned her place on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. But time has passed, and like the fading star on the boulevard, Sparkle too is facing the biggest challenge of her life, aging. Though she continues to host a vibrant aerobics show, her boss, Harvey, sees her as nothing more than a relic from the 1930s, a woman no longer youthful or desirable. After an unsuccessful confrontation with Harvey, Sparkle finds herself bitterly reflecting on her fading fame. A billboard with her torn-up poster greets her as she drives off in a daze, leading to a car accident. Although physically unharmed, her psyche is left shattered. A young male nurse slips her a mysterious gift, an ad for the substance and a phone number to purchase it. The substance promises its users a revolutionary outcome. Injecting the substance will allow them to split into a younger, more perfect version of themselves. The catch is, two versions of the same person must take turns living, one for 7 days while the other sleeps. But despite the alternating lives, they remain fundamentally one entity. In her anxiety, Sparkle makes the decision to inject the substance, and after an excruciating ordeal, the beautiful and flawless Sue emerges from her back. Sue quickly finds success, while Sparkle fades into the shadows of her own mansion. What seems like a dual success story is in fact the beginning of a tragic self-destruction. It's fascinating how synchronicity works. Not long ago in Maxine, T. West used a star on Hollywood Boulevard to make a point. Early in that film, Maxine stubs out a cigarette on silent-era star Theda Bara's star, walking away as if shedding the past, a symbolic rejection of Hollywood's historical exploitation of women. The substance, however, tells the opposite story. Sparkle cannot part with her star. Obsessed with her past and youth, she ultimately brings about her own downfall. This narrative reversal highlights the tragedy of those trapped in time. The film's customer service representative for the substance is cold and robotic, seemingly leaving all choices up to Sparkle. But this is an illusion of choice, a frequent reality. Yes, you can make a choice, but the consequence of not choosing is to lose everything. Faced with Hollywood's male-dominated rejection, Sparkle finds herself with no real option. This inevitable choice leads to her downfall. The relationship between Sparkle and Sue is spelled out clearly throughout the film. You are one. They are not separate beings, but two sides of the same person, no matter how much they disagree or attempt independence. They cannot share memories or sensations, and at times they lack control over each other. Yet they are fundamentally one, embodying Sparkle's desires and fears. Sue, the glamorous and youthful version, wishes to prolong her time in the spotlight, pushing the 7-day limit. But is this solely Sue's selfish desire? Deep down, Sparkle longs for Sue to completely replace her. From the beginning, when Sparkle is locked away by Sue without much resistance, we see her willingness to hide and escape. Later, when she hesitates to kill Sue, her reluctance reflects her inner conflict. Were it not for the ravages of aging and the inevitable awakening, Sparkle might have gladly slept forever. This cycle of aging and awakening represents Sparkle's last thread of reason. No matter how much she tries to escape aging and reality, she ultimately has to face it. The fact that they cannot share memories is symbolic of aging's inevitability. Sparkle's deteriorating mental state and obsessive pursuit of youth only make her see herself as more monstrous. This twisted self-deprecation is visually realized through her rapid aging on screen. In the end, Sparkle wants to put an end to it all, but she still surrenders to her desires at the last moment. She wants to see her younger self become a star at the New Year's Eve celebration, leading to her fatal encounter with Sue. When Sparkle is about to be killed by Sue, she even smiles because, in the mirror, she sees the beautiful version of herself still alive. There are two major conflicts between Sue and Sparkle. One is food. Sparkle, in her near-retirement state, indulges in junk food in her apartment while watching Sue's meteoric rise, venting her frustration through gluttony. Sue, however, suffers a nightmare where she pulls a fried chicken leg out of her belly button, a grotesque manifestation of her own disgust for Sparkle's binge eating, because she herself cannot indulge. This is a clear reflection of the societal obsession with body image, with both women trapped by the need to maintain the perfect figure. The second conflict is sex. Sparkle, lonely and intoxicated in a bar, contrasts sharply with the flirtatious lovers around her. Meanwhile, Sue spends her nights with men, enjoying their attention, while Sparkle can't even face the prospect of a casual date with an old classmate. Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs comes to mind: physiological, safety, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. In the film, Sue and Sparkle, being one, reflect a life out of balance in each of these aspects. From food, work security, self-esteem, to the absence of romantic relationships, the substance reveals the fragmented human experience underneath Hollywood's glamorous facade. Returning to the recurring line, "You are one," it becomes clear that Sue and Sparkle are not true rivals but manifestations of Sparkle's self-hatred. Sparkle envies the younger version of herself, which leads to resentment of her aging self. Sue, in turn, despises Sparkle's indulgences, loathing her own primal needs. Their conflict is really Sparkle's internal struggle, and her self-loathing is what drives her downfall. This dynamic is reinforced by the motif of the mirror. Throughout the film, the mirror reflects both Sparkle's perception of herself and the judgments of others. Sparkle's outburst before a mirror before a date shows how she feels mocked by her own aging. When she smiles eerily after seeing Sue in the mirror, it reflects the joy of feeling validated by her younger self. Sparkle lacks self-awareness, shaped instead by external perceptions. Even when she possesses self-awareness, it is poisoned and twisted by the gaze of others, leading to her self-hatred. This theme is presented bluntly throughout the film. Sparkle's arrogant boss, Harvey, who devours his meal in front of her, embodies the exploitative forces Sparkle faces. The lecherous neighbor, the judgmental panelists, and the white male audience at the New Year's Eve party are all part of the system that feeds on her self-doubt, sexualizes her, and instills her fear of aging. Sparkle's destruction doesn't start when Sue begins taking more time. It begins when she submits to Hollywood's rules by injecting the substance in the first place. By degrading herself to create a younger version of herself, she starts down the path of total self-destruction. There's nothing more terrifying than an environment that makes you hate yourself for failing to meet its standards. In the film's finale, Sue dares to inject the substance again, shedding her skin to reveal a grotesque monster. She stumbles towards the most important night of her life, but everything goes horribly wrong. Labeled a monster, her head is blown off. She did nothing wrong, yet the world constantly hurt her. As she crawls towards her shattered star on the Walk of Fame, Sparkle smiles in her hallucination, feeling her past glory once more, as Sue's body disintegrates. In this final moment of destruction, director Fargeet melds the characters of Sparkle and Sue into Monster Elizabeth, a fusion of love and hate, self-destruction and self-acceptance. The ending, however, remains cruel. The next day, Sparkle's remains are swept away by the cleaners. The cracked star remains, still shining, as if nothing had happened. Much like Silent Hill, the substance closes on a chilling note: cyclical exploitation and rare moments of self-love. In a year filled with feminist horror films such as Maxine and The Bath of the Devil, the theme of self-love and defiance is both timely and richly layered. Besides the plot, two other key points deserve attention. First, the practical effects. Though not as groundbreaking as marketing might suggest, the body horror elements in the substance are striking. From the back-birthing scenes reminiscent of Alien, Covenant to the final form of Monster Elizabeth, Fargeet's use of practical effects shines through. The monstrous form of Elizabeth looks like a demonic creature from a nightmare. The use of practical effects grounds the film's horror in reality. The back-birthing scene was done using prosthetics, and the head explosion was a nod to old-school horror. The practical effects give the film a visceral, tangible feel, reminiscent of Alien. The eyeball-splitting sequence was an especially gruesome delight, tapping into a primal fear of body distortion. The use of slow motion and close-ups amplifies the ugliness and horror of the characters. For example, the scene of Harvey eating vividly personifies his greed and disgust as an exploiter. Sparkle and her companions are like that bowl of shrimp, peeled, devoured, and tossed aside by the exploiters, stripped of any voice. The slow motion of Sue kicking Sparkle to death brings her self-hatred to a climax. The overhead shot in the bathroom is undoubtedly one of the film's most striking visuals, with the constricting walls resembling an endless abyss, reflecting Sparkle's despair. Many of the film's scenes are designed with a surreal quality, like the shining-style corridors of the TV station and the sterile white room for getting medication, creating a sufficiently eerie atmosphere that aligns with the film's free-spirited logic. For instance, Sue's methodical tidying after her birth, and the ambiguity surrounding how she navigates the entertainment industry, are questions the director chooses not to answer, instead serving the theme. The film also continues the bloody and hallucinatory style of the director's debut, Revenge Warlord, where the tense electronic score effectively conveys a sense of panic. Additionally, Sue wears star-shaped earrings reminiscent of the protagonist, Jen, from Revenge Warlord. Finally, we must address a controversial issue: the concepts of anti-male gaze and male gaze itself. This issue is already evident in Blonde. If you shoot male gaze scenes and even exaggerate them, but the purpose is to critique the male gaze, then does it still count as male gaze? In Certain Substance, Margaret Curry's full frontal appearance, along with extreme close-ups of her intimate areas during aerobics, is undoubtedly a deliberate choice by the director. After all, these body images are among the things that exploitation in the film cares about most. Exploitation against exploitation, male gaze against male gaze. Frankly, in war films, we all hope to see the brutal realities to reflect the horrors of war, achieving an anti-war effect. However, the wars depicted in films are ultimately fictional, while the reality of exploitation is indisputable. Personally, I feel that Certain Substance does indeed push the boundaries of exploitation, but its theme remains a critique of it. Previously, I noticed many people mentioning the film's striking similarities to the 1988 movie Rejuvenatrix, so I took some time to watch it. The story undeniably revolves around the theme of rejuvenation. The protagonist, Elizabeth Warren, was once a dazzling star but is now aged and faded, with her wealth unable to mask the sorrow of her decline. Thus, she funds Dr. Gregory Ashton to develop a serum for youth restoration. The serum works, allowing Elizabeth to reclaim her youth through surgery and injections. However, the serum is not permanent. Each time it wears off, Elizabeth transforms into a monster. To revert back, she must continuously inject higher doses of the serum. This serum is extracted from human brains by Dr. Gregory Ashton. The illegal acquisition of corpses is no longer sufficient. Only fresh human brains will do. In fact, the closest aspect between the two films lies in the protagonist's drug usage. The primary perspective of Rejuvenatrix is that of Dr. Gregory, while Elizabeth is not portrayed as a victim of exploitation. The film transitions from a horror experiment to a monster-killing movie. The protagonist of Certain Substance is also named Elizabeth, which might be an homage to the earlier film. However, the themes and narrative structures of the two films are vastly different. In the end, The Substance is a cautionary tale about the dangers of societal pressures and the destructive nature of self-hatred. It's a film that forces us to confront our own anxieties about aging, beauty, and the male gaze. While it may be a difficult watch at times, it's a thought-provoking exploration of the human condition. By presenting us with a grotesque and exaggerated version of Hollywood, The Substance invites us to question our own complicity in the systems that exploit and objectify women. It's a film that will stay with you long after the credits roll, prompting you to consider the ways in which we can resist the pressures to conform to unrealistic beauty standards.